I think the problem is that when you do something for charity, anything charitable, it's supposed to be amazing, right? It's supposed to be one of the best things you've ever done. It's supposed to be a wholesome, endlessly rewarding kind of experience. One that kind of creates a feedback loop. You did good and it felt good, and you want to put that out into the world. You want to share that positive feeling of how you felt when you were doing that thing. And that, you put that out and that inspires other people, and we're all out here doing good, altruistic, noble, inspiring things, and inspiring others to do the same. But in my experience, at least, it's hard as fuck. And far from feeling inspired, when I've done things for charity and when I've done things to raise money for charitable causes, my feeling at the end of them is, Jesus Christ, I never want to do that again. You know? I have a few examples of this and some that aren't even mine, but I just feel like there's a myth that we're all keeping up. There's a myth that we're all perpetuating about how easy it is to do these things. Not easy, otherwise you wouldn't be raising money, but that the doing them is the hardest part. When the truth is, it's like everything around them and the motivation, and the doing them, there's a huge aspect of the doing them that's unbelievable. And people push themselves way too far. People put themselves at risk so that they can help others. I mean, again, I suppose, that does sound very heroic and altruistic when you think of it that way. But when we're doing things in such great numbers, maybe we should consider like the risk that's going on there. I think the main one for me is, in my personal experience, that I ran the marathon. One in particular, I ran the London Marathon. Shocker. It was the closest one to home. Not least literally, it's just up the road, but also because I'd, watched it on TV, and I had friends who'd run it, several friends who'd run it. And I think maybe the year or two before I ran it, I had a very close friend run it, and I sort of went to see them and support them and be there. I feel like maybe I saw them around the course. Yeah, maybe I was at a couple of key milestones. But my clearest memory, I think, is them really making it seem like it was nothing, like what they'd run. Because we all got together, what they often do, especially if you're running for a particular charity. There's an opportunity at the end to get together with other runners who've run for the same charity as you have. And they put on some snacks, and they put on they hang a banner or whatever. And so we were there at this kind of after party with the runner in question, and they they sat down, as I recall, seemingly not that tired, in still in their kind of like, running gear. I think they pull some, whatever other stuff over, keep warm, whatever. But they didn't seem that affected. That they've just run 42 kilometers, and it really seemed like it was nothing. And then to prove that it was nothing, this person whipped out their acoustic guitar and started just singing a song, and just playing and singing, and in such a way that, expected the room to join in with him. And a few people did. I can't remember what song it was that would have really added to this anecdote, but I felt exhausted having chased them around London. I felt exhausted having gone from this tube station to the next, trying to anticipate where they'd be, trying to work out their time, etc. I think maybe I was even like shaking a tin with their chosen charity on, right? And that was a lot. I was on my feet all day, whatever. And so I kind of grabbed a couple of snacks at this after party and chilled out. And here was your man singing away, playing a song, rousing the troops, keeping morale high. And he's the one that has done the work. They're the one that's put in all this effort, that's done the thing, that. So seeing that, and again, some other friends who ran it, that was someone who was exactly like from my school, exactly my age. So it really, again, went to humanize the whole thing and just made it seem like this was an achievable, doable thing. The greatest race that you can do was achievable. Awesome. So an opportunity came up because a friend of mine who used to run for Diabetes UK, a charity very close to my heart, had run it for them several times. And so he was, I guess, retiring from doing this. He said he was going to run some shorter runs, but for that reason, he said he could get my name in the mix. And I went through, I think, a kind of selection, and I got the opportunity to run for Diabetes UK, which is fantastic. And, I was really proud of that. And I was really honored to be asked, offered, invited, whatever. And again, I've got this image of my school friend, singing and dancing at the end. I'm like, sure, I can do this. Why wouldn't I be able to do this? Tens of thousands of people run this race alone every single year. People do it in diving suits and gorilla costumes. Why wouldn't I be able to do it? So I just took it on. I rested entirely on the laurels of having like done some cross country running at school. And at this point, what is this? This is like 10 years ago. I've left school maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I haven't run cross country since maybe a few years before I left school, so 3 years. But it's been a long time. I've done no sport of any kind. I've been to university in the interim, and I did no physical exercise of any kind. I drank and ate and ruined my body, shot my cholesterol through the roof. And so why I thought, oh yeah, I used to run through the muck as a schoolboy and that would be enough. Why I thought that, I have no idea. But I got onto the like onto the, through the admissions board of the marathon nice and early. And so I knew I was doing it, and it was coming up in like April or something like this. And again, just like dining out on this imagined past success of being okay with long distance when I was 15, 13 years old. And even then, that distance was probably like a few hundred meters at most. Like, I just don't know why I relied on this so much. But I just didn't start training. I just didn't start. I just didn't get round to it whatsoever. And then Christmas passed, and the race is in like mid-April, Easter time, can't remember. And Christmas passes, and that's when other people start being like, "Hey man, aren't you say you were running the marathon this year? Oh, that's pretty cool. How's your training going?" And you're like, yeah. I've bought some running shoes. I was like, "Oh, cool. You must be pretty fit then. You must do a lot of running. That's why you're doing this." I'm like, yeah. I haven't done anything that's raised my heart rate since before I went to university. And all I did then was pollute my body for 3 years. People are like, "Oh, yeah. Great. Sounds good." So then it starts to creep in, the fear and whatever, the terror. And I'm like, okay, so I should probably start running. And I start running, and it's okay. Right? And maybe this is why I remember having relied on this so much. But I do like 5-6K a time, and it's okay. Like, I don't die. I don't know if my pace is any good, but I don't die. And that's fine. And that's better than I'm expecting at this stage. And again, I'm like feeling pretty chill about this, despite the fact that like I've got to go from 6K to 42 of the fuckers. And I'm not going to be doing it. And, I can stop, but like, if I want to drop out of that little 6K that I'm doing after work, there's no ramifications. I just don't do it, I just walk the back half. I just quit any time. And yet I have it in my head, it's fine. I can round up. It'll round up. It's not an issue. So I start following this plan, and I get better and I get a bit longer, but I'm taking every excuse to abandon the plan. Like, I'm not feeling 100%, shouldn't run today. Or I think my knee's a bit twisted, shouldn't run today. So on and so on. There's just so many reasons to not do the running, like the training. And like, conversely, I'm working up a playlist, and like there's songs that like get me going, and I'm finding out what works for me, and I'm finding routes I like, and I'm liking drawing my plan around my town so that I can follow a course, and I'm adding a little bit of distance all the time, and so it's going somewhere, but it's not like I'm not going for a record time. And certainly whenever I can take a break, I do, and whenever I can skip a session for the most feeble of excuses, that session gets skipped, no question. So the motivation is questionable at best. The motivation is questionable. And then obviously the time gets closer, and Diabetes UK is reaching out, and they're like, "Oh, by the way, like, you're not just running this race, right? Just to run this race. You got to run it for us." I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah. And what does that mean exactly?" They're like, "Oh, well, we'll send you a nice shirt to wear." Lovely. "Oh, we'll put you on an after party." "Oh, yeah, I've been to one of those. I won't be bringing my guitar, but I do have an idea of the vibe." oh, and you got to raise some money for us. I'm like, oh yeah, well, I was expecting this. And they're like, oh yeah, you have to raise a certain amount. I'm like, hang on, what do you mean by that? And they're like, oh yeah, oh, maybe should have said this before, but if you don't raise a certain amount, then we're gonna come at you. Like, oh, what? What the hell are you talking about? Surely, if I raise £1 sterling for you, then that's enough. Surely, if I run 42 kilometers around the city of London, emblazoned in your colours, and I raise 100 British pence, we're all good, right? You and me, we're square. No. You've got to raise a certain amount, and that's not a piddly amount. We're not. This isn't a bake sale, right? And this isn't optional. You are required to raise in sponsorship for your race. And you're required to raise this, by the way, no matter your financial circumstances. No matter who you know. When you cross that finish line, we will be shaking you down for £2,000. £2,000 sterling we expect of you. It doesn't matter that you don't have that kind of money in your own goddamn bank account because you're functionally a child at 22 with a job that barely pays anything. Doesn't matter that everybody you know is in the exact same financial situation as you because they're your peers. Doesn't matter that we didn't tell you this before. Doesn't matter that we have myriad streams of income as a charitable body. Doesn't matter that you're doing this amazing thing for us. If you don't do it to the tune of this amount, we'll break your legs. You'll never be allowed to wear the blue and slightly darker blue of Diabetes UK in this town ever again. We will run you down if you can still run after you've completed this 26 miles of running. You're going to get us this cash, or we're going to get you. Now, I don't know about you, dear listener, but I was shook because now I'm dealing with, I frankly, I thought that the training was hard enough. Like there was enough to be terrified about in that respect. And now all of a sudden I'm dealing with the prospect of the loan sharks of a registered charity coming to get me as well. And I had people suggesting to me other ways to fundraise. Like people were talking about hosting a quiz night, like a trivia get together. And I just thought that was crazy because I was doing a thing to fundraise. So why would I need to host a fundraiser? The City of London was hosting a fundraiser and I was taking part in it. And then I was taking the money and giving it to the charity of my choice. So it was crazy to be having a conversation instead about now I'm organizing my own thing on top of that, doing more just to satisfy this financial grab. Anyway, avoiding doing that actually sent me harder into a training focus. Because I was just so mad and so avoidant of thinking of other ways to fundraise, I ran in a much more serious and concerted manner. And so all of a sudden I was like getting pretty good at this. And so there I was, it was the big day, ready to go. And it had arrived, and I'd fundraised, and I'd bullied everybody I knew to cough up just so I could, make it to this day. And I hoped, I just stopped checking the fundraising page in the end because I hoped that, so inspired by my feats of awesomeness, the momentum would carry me not only across the finish line on the goddamn day, but also the finish line of this financial target. So something that had started as I want to do this Herculean physical task, and also I want to show my dedication and give to this charity that's given so much to me. Suddenly it's turned into me chasing my friends for money that they don't have, for something I haven't done yet, for a charity they've never heard of, and telling everyone who had the good idea of me organizing a trivia night on top of that to get lost and go screw themselves, because clearly I loved the charity that much, but not enough to do anything else. So just pure resentment leading into the day. And then again, like you've done your training, so I'm feeling good. I'm like, well, whatever. And they make you feel good. You in the run up to it, they make you feel pretty good. Like there's lots of like nice emails that you get from the charity, and then you go and you're involved in the process of the marathon itself. And like you go and you get a fun like party bag of like stuff for the day. You get your vest, you get your number, but also you just like you go to the other side of the city to get involved in this like corporate event for all the fundraisers all the sponsors, I should say, that are involved in this event. And you're like, suddenly you're like, oh, this isn't, I thought this was just like, again, this altruistic heroic day of people pushing themselves to their limit. But it's not. It's kind of just like another corporate event, sponsorship deals up the wazoo, another opportunity for sports brands to tell you their slogans, and unrelated brands to latch on to the positive vibes of the day. So I go along, I get my number, and I'm also given a bunch of other stuff. Like I've got some cereal bars from some nutrition company I've never heard of, but also I've got like a razor. I'm just given a Gillette razor blade. Now, I'm not going to complain. I use that razor for many years after the fact. It's a very good razor. You replace the blades, but the like body of it, right? I use it for years afterwards. Amazing. Great gift. Never would have bought it for myself. I think I was using temporary razors up until then, which again shows you that I was a child at the time. But what the goddamn hell has a razor got to do with the run in any aspect? Am I supposed to like shave down for aerodynamism? Like, am I supposed to shave my armpits so that I sweat more, less? I don't know. There's less friction. What's going on here? What they didn't give me is like, everybody says the same thing, which is like, your nips have a whole issue. Never happened to me, but like, why didn't they give me something appropriate for that? Like, where's my Vaseline, bro? Like, None of that. No. So I got this Gillette razor. The only thing that seemed relevant at the time was a bag of rice. I mean, I suppose they told you to carb load before, but like, there's definitely other ways to do that. But I've got half a kilo of goddamn rice in this bag. I've trekked across London to get my number, and I've come home with like the ability to feed several people, or myself, over several nights. And again, I guess that was the most relevant thing. I'd put it straight in the cupboard, but the next day I'm standing in the warm-up area getting ready to race. And all you get told all the time before is like, don't change anything on the day. Don't do anything crazy. Like, stick to your routine, stick to what you know. You've been gradually increasing your distance this whole time. Don't mix shit up on the day. And I'm stretching, I'm drinking my Lucozade, I'm doing whatever. And the person, I overhear some person over here, and they're like, "Oh yeah, did you get that bag of rice in the party bag, in the numbers bag?" They're like, "Yeah, I just put that away. I think I'll probably have that afterwards." They're like, "Oh, you didn't eat the rice?" They're like, "No, I think it's half a kilo, so I'll probably just eat it whenever, just put it in the cupboard. So maybe I'd have it afterwards to recuperate." They're like, "Oh, I ate the whole thing." This person had thought it was the recommended dose of rice to consume pre-marathon. So they've taken on board half a kilo of white rice the night before. Now, you lose track of people pretty quickly, so I've got no confirmation that they vommed up their guts within the first 100 meters, but I wouldn't be surprised. I'd place my charitable donation, I'd double or nothing on that having happened to them, because that's a crazy thing to do. But again, you followed some dumb plan that you've got off the internet to go from like, what was mine called? It was like 4 months to 4 hours. Crazy. Never going to hit 4 hours, but all good. But what do they know? What does that marathon plan know? It's just some PDF I goddamn found. Like, they don't know. I'm not a physical trainer. This sheet is not. And certainly this person eating half a kilo of rice doesn't know better or worse about the whole thing, because we're all amateurs about to do something that should only be done by professionals. And that is my takeaway on the day. It's a crazy thing to do. The first half, I was fine. It was a distance I could manage. I'd run it before. I was running it again. My playlist was rock solid. The vibes were great. Kids are giving you like candy. DJs are playing music. People are cheering. Fantastic. Then with the image of marathon runners and, Olympians in my mind, I wasn't prepared to shit myself while running. So I hit the half. I was pleased with my time. I saw some Portaloos. I'm like, seems like a great opportunity. So I take off the course. Everything's going great. Everything's going to plan. I pause my timer. I step off the course and I'm like, oh, here's the loos. Here I go. And what I don't see as I come off the thing is they're not just there. There's a queue for these cabins and it's massive. And I'm like, oh, well, everybody's moving fast, so it'll be fast. And I only need to pee, and I'm only doing that to offset the need to things getting worse later, so it'll all be fine. And I completely fall prey to the sunk cost fallacy, and I stay in that lineup for 15, 20 minutes. My body completely cools down. I'm like, oh, it'll just be, this'll, I completely screw myself. I do go to the bathroom. It was needed by that point, so I guess some part of this was worth it. But when I get back on the track, I'm ice cold. And the second half of the marathon was the most intense, psychologically damaging, crushing 3 hours of my life. Like, I was on track for, 4:30, around about then. And I came in much closer to like 5:15, something like this, because I lost it. I was walking for a little bit, stumbling. I had the compression things around the knee and the top of the leg. And I'm just doing crazy things. Like, you hear people, go up Everest and take their clothes off because they get too cold as this extreme version of hypothermia sets in, and then they just straight up die, obviously. And that starts going through my head as I feel such intense pressure from these things around my knees that I again step off the course. It's like mile 15, 16 at this point. I peel them off. I've run 100 meters, and the shooting pains of now trying to run, one, without the compression, and two, introducing a new pain to the pain that I've received from using the compression things. All of that doubled up. And at some point, you just make a deal with yourself, which is, if I keep running, if I keep moving forward, then eventually this torture will come to an end. Whereas if I stop, the slower I go, the longer I will be in hell. So that is the only motivation that you have. That if you move forward, and if you try to do that slightly faster than you're currently doing, then the worst thing that's ever happened to you will be over sooner. And that's pretty much all that carried me around the last third of this race. Was just, I just feel like the whole thing was just, I was bleary-eyed. I was barely running. I was just on the brink of crying, but didn't know if I could spare the moisture. It was just horrific. Your body's just done. You're completely out of energy. And all that's carrying you forward is the promise of it being over. Not the glory, not the satisfaction, just there being no more of it. And that's all that's driving me forward. Until I come round back close to the Thames. And I start seeing signs, the crowd pick up again. There's a bit more cheering going on. The mood just shifts around me. And then I see, as I say, more signs, and there's one in particular, and it says, in whatever it was, 2.5 miles, you go down in history. And suddenly it all makes sense. And suddenly it's all worth it. And I haven't been able to run for a while. I've been stumbling, walking, just falling vaguely forwards. And I see this sign, and it gives me not just spite to move forward because otherwise I'll die, but hope that there can be another side, that there is something golden at the end. And so I don't know how fast I was going, but I did run and I didn't stop. And I ran that last 2 and a bit miles. And you come around, the crowds get louder and louder, and you're approaching. You end at Buckingham Palace. You just pass in front of it. And my friend has made this playlist for me. My friend AJ, he's an awesome DJ, and he's taken full responsibility for the music. He knows my tastes. And he's made me this playlist that I think is about 5 hours long. And I don't know what's in it, but I know what the last song is. And it's Helicopter by Bloc Party. Just my song at that time in my life. And I know that this song is in the playlist because I requested it. And as the thing goes on, I don't hear it, so I assume that it's going to be near the end, if not the last one. And I'm running up and I see Buckingham Palace and I know I'm within the end. And this song, this Bloc Party anthem starts. And I know it's the last song. And I know I'm hundreds of meters away from the end, which at that point is nothing. And I cross that finish line and I just immediately start weeping. I can't see anything. I've got nothing left. And I'm just crying and crying. And I'm trying to find my mom in the crowd. And then it starts raining. And the whole thing is just a blur after that. So it's a lot, is what I'm trying to say. A lot happened. A lot went on. And what was supposed to be a fun day out for the whole family, and something to put on the old resume, something to raise a bit of cash, raise a bit of awareness, ended up being the greatest challenge of my life. And I looked into the depths of myself and discovered who I am as a person and what it means to be up against something real. And that's completely batshit. It's totally crazy that I should have just been allowed to walk into that. I mean, yes, okay, I understand that there was I chose to do that, is what I mean. It wasn't just a matter of course. I applied, I got selected, and I did it, and so on. But no one gave me a medical exam. No one checked up on my mental health before or after. And that seems irresponsible. And I thought I'd been through it. And then the fact of the matter is that I went through nothing at all. Because on the same race as me, about 100 meters behind me, I later found out someone died. No previous risk of health, no prior knowledge that this person was at any untoward position in their physical ability, and they strapped on their number and they got their goddamn bag of rice just like I did. And that person is no longer with us. And that's completely unhinged. That a bunch of untrained, unvetted individuals should do this thing that is widely regarded as at the limits, and in some cases beyond the limits of human capability. What are we doing? And I'm supposed to walk away from the marathon, and just like my friend with the guitar did, and just like my friend who retired and helped me apply for my spot, which was his spot, I'm supposed to inspire the next generation. I'm supposed to pass the torch. And I know that when I did it, I saw the abyss. And I know that in the same race, when I went through that, someone ran their last. And it just seems completely out of whack. What would possess me to tell anyone else to just jump in and give it a go themselves? If I'm going through that process that I went through of raising money, and I'm contemplating that number that I've got to reach, and I'm thinking about other ways that I could raise money, none of them involved the risk of death through sheer physical extremity. I've mentioned Everest. I mean, people do that. I don't know if people do that for charity, but that's more of an extreme sport example. But I'm sure somebody does it to raise awareness for something. And people die on Everest. Another friend of mine was undertaking a rowing challenge where they had to row across an ocean. They survived, but they did not make it across that ocean. They had to be rescued. And I just feel like we don't talk about that much. It's noble and it's heroic, but it's also dumb. It's also totally nuts. It should be examined why we do that, and perhaps it should be discouraged. Because at the end of the day, I thought that by running the marathon, I would be inspiring people to give money to the charity. But what I found out was that it was just the same as when I was like trying to sell people my music, trying to get them to come to my shows. It was a mixture of amateur sales techniques and bullying, guilt tripping. I feel like saying I was going to run the marathon was the beginning of the conversation. But the conversation would always go like, oh, come on, like, what can you spare? Like, just think about what else you'd spend this money on. And so I just cajoled money out of people. And I just hustled people. And like I say, the marathon and doing that was just the beginning of the conversation. No one gave me money. Shrinkingly few people gave me money because I was running that distance. They gave me money because I bothered them, I ran a completely ridiculous distance that pushed my body to the limit and very likely could have ended me. And then I'm supposed to step away and say, that was dope. Everybody should do that. I'm supposed to raise my medal aloft and say, everybody jump on board. Let's all run a marathon. And I've just never been inspired to do that. I've run stuff since. I ran a 10K. I ran a half marathon. And these are reasonable distances, but equally no one checked in before. Hey, Tommy, you ready to look into the eye of the storm once more? Before you strap back in? I actually struggled more on the 10K, I think. That was tough. Physically very, very tough. I think I was even less fit then. It was a long time later. But I don't know. I feel like maybe there should be more guidance about how completely crazy this is. Or that the money raised should be relative to how completely crazy it is. But neither of those things was my experience. And the cherry on the top was that I got a letter from Diabetes UK. A few weeks later, maybe even months. It wasn't immediate. They looked after me. There was an after party on the day. I think I got a massage. Like I say, it was all a blur. But I gradually came back into consciousness. And there was a massage. There was some crappy food. Low sugar, of course. Very good. But eventually this letter arrived in the post. And I ripped it open. And they said, congratulations, Thomas, on finishing the marathon. I don't think they mentioned my time because it was bad in the end. Or maybe they just didn't know. But they said, congratulations, Thomas. We're so proud of you. Thank you. By the way, you never did raise that full 2,000. You only got to 1,900. Oh, that's right, listeners. I raised £1,900 whilst risking life and limb. And I was amazed by that feat. And I got a letter from Diabetes UK and said, hey, you didn't do enough. And here's what's going to happen next. You're going to pay us the difference. I can assure you now I did not do that. I never contacted Diabetes UK ever again. And I'll never run a marathon ever again. And if you approach me and say that you're running one, I'll tell you, you're an idiot. And that's what I think the problem is.